Written by Honorable D.Early. Going Up North, the autobiography. Here's my story. D.Early story of a kid born on the south side of Chicago in a part of Englewood no realizes exists until you take them there. I was born on 55th and Justine in Chicago. The little memory that I have growing up serves a greater purpose. The pocket of land sits where there are churches, liquor stores, medium services, and a unique group of people who throughout time became to be my distant cousins. I remember little about this place. I sit sometimes and watch the area through a satellite to see how it has developed over time. I think, like, was I that privileged to be in a place like that? My mom had me there on January 20, 1990. I was delivered at a hospital in that area. My grandfather took care of everything. Homes he had gotten up until now and then. Growing up on the south side of Chicago was like a curse to me. Here I am, a true Southerner stuck in a gang-infested city. At my ages I was doing what any other child with one parent would be essentially doing. By 5 years of age I had been to Jackson, Mississippi. By 10 years of age I had been moving around all over Chicago and the United States. I was in a place I had rather not been. Say now. I speak multiple languages. College educated. Technically educated. And many diplomas. I grew up speaking standard English. I couldn't speak slang. Slang was not my thing. I had the choice of speaking Swahili or proper English. I chose the former. I learned how to speak it through listening to podcasts and developing my own instant style of transliteration. I didn't take it seriously at first. Heck, who am I? My best grade was a C+. I made it in school doing enough. But here's my story. It all started from what I could remember. My mom meeting my father on 41st and Wentworth at a meatpacking place. They met and had me. I was not cognizant until 6 or 8. I more remember things happening around at 9. I was living in the projects. Remember the south side? It was the Kenwood and Bronzeville area. I miss that place. It seemed like home. Outside of the family wars at least. I was a kid who wanted to be friends with everyone. But once I got pushed around enough I ultimately became an introvert. The jokes and the punches and intimidation tactics ran me away from the culture of Chicago and the culture of what was becoming America. I stayed to myself. I enjoyed playing the Super Nintendo with my closest cousins and going on long walks at about 12 years old around the city without parental guidance. My mom raised me alone. Her and my father broke apart when we were in Mississippi. We came back up north. To me this was selfish. I wanted to stay in Mississippi. I felt like every kid around me had it easy. They the best clothes, the least of worries, super adherent parents, and loyalty among peers. I was just the kid who was just around and allowed to be around. I got older though. My thoughts matured. By age 16 I was living in Michigan. Southeast, that is. I was near Detroit. Growing up there was not like Chicago. People didn't confront your desires to be. People left you alone. I mean, why wouldn't they? Everyone in those parts had homes. You weren't going to miss up a good thing when everything you had was a good thing. I disliked it though. The best part about growing up there was being able to walk to the park and play basketball. But like other cities, as I got older, it became very lame to do those things. The streets got lighter, the communities dried up, and the people who were around then weren't around later on. I thought, what was it I was going to do to better myself? I left. I left Chicago and Michigan behind me. I went to Minneapolis. I met a lot of cool people from around the world there. I met Haitians. I met Kenyans, Ghanaians, Somalis. You name it. I met every culture you possibly could. This opened my eyes. Going to Minnesota was my opportunity to make good money and get good schooling. I made it my best of fortune. I was renting out a place on Adrian Street, right off Albion Way. I was renting from a lady named Sue Nichols and her husband Bill Nichols. I was holding a job or 3 at the time. I was 28 waist and 140 pounds. I was in shape. Metabolically speaking, of course. My school was a ways away, but I got there on time due to traffic. I was working at the airport, where I saw the famed rapper J. Cole in 2016 while sweeping in the hallways of MSP. I held a job at multiple nursing homes. This was all before shooting guard Anthony Edwards took over the city. I was myself a mild age. My favorite thing to do was transport around the city. Go to Whole Foods, go to Mall of America, go to my school's campus and just be free to travel. I think now it's something I don't take for granted. I'm no longer the sleek-shaped young man who could sweep people off their feet with charisma or a smile. I fell off. For many reasons. I finished school in nursing and transportation and moved back to Michigan. Worst decision in my life. I regret it. I had no other choice though. I came back to a widow, my mother, and a dying grandfather. A half-brother who was enraged with violent emotions and a hot for the streets. A troubled half-sister. And an all too familiar path view of the streets I often too much saw. I wanted to leave the north at some point but I never did. I had been down to Texas but I ended up getting into legal trouble with another half-sister. I saw what was around me. I didn't like it. I became deeply involved with my spirit. I started making videos on YouTube. I would do chants, speak in Wabasha, read books, encourage others to give positive affirmations. This is what I did. I got used to it. No one really noticed me. If they did, they saw me as some person who was extremely different and too odd to be from their culture. My experience is right, all from which I had always seen. I ended thinking about moving to Africa. But before I could, my relatives were giving me the problem of the century. Serving me under family court. It was me against their feminism. I saw it right. Here I am at 26 not knowing what other avenue in life I wanted to take. Back home with my mother who is aging. And not in touch with my cousins who I grew up with. It was all she wrote for me. A pain in my backside. I was in and out of mental health facilities trying to cope with the pressures of not having money and free time to spend wisely. No one was supporting my dreams. I had no social life. I was at a point where I had just gave up. I thought this place of Michigan was like any other place. But I was mistakenly wrong. I called around. Got back into my senses. I remembered. When I was 19 I served in the military. I had forgot. How do you forgot that you were a vetted serviceman? Well, I did. After so many times of being put down in the environment. Being told you are a waste. You're no one. Experiencing homelessness. I got help. A lady for North Carolina helped me get my separation benefits. I was at a crossroad. I was happy. I was thinking my pain and suffering has stopped. This was all mental instability. Impulsiveness leading me to an early grave. When I got my benefits I turned into a completely different person. I was leaving my 20s and becoming a man. I was 30 now. President Biden was president and I was thinking about politics. I wanted to run for office in my community. I wanted to help underprivileged teenagers. The ones who were mannered and didn't have any example of leadership. Meaning the adults around them gave up on them at some point. This was my time to be better than any naysayer around me. I got back to contacting residents in the town and seeing if they would be willing to join in on a rock to solving our identity issues. I wanted to stop psych depression. I wanted to help people travel. I did that. My approach was become an ambassador to places like Africa. My network was started. I met people who I could invest in and bring the love back that was missing. Because you have to remember, life is short. I got a good 26 years going on Earth. Here I am at 35 and I still haven't recanted my youth. So I did what I had to do. I met people who were interested solving humanitarian issues. I got with it. Just a few years ago I bought my first home. Then I didn't stop there. I bought farmland nearby. It wasn't the best investment, but it was a solvent one. I planted my feet in the ground and got to working. All the while weeding out the serious from the not so serious in my searches. My diet started to improve. I went back vegan. Eating a high-protein diet and low-carb. I wanted to be new. But I knew something. That was going to be a task. If I still felt like a prisoner in my own community, I knew that maybe I would have had to leave it. I stayed for what it meant. I was there presently but not in my mind. I attempted to get my citizenship as a dual citizen in Africa. I wanted to be a citizen of Cameroon or Ghana. I knew my ancestors had come from those places. I was excited to find out who I was deep down. I wanted to let everyone know you could find your importance if you just allowed yourself to be. That's what I did. I sat and observed. I sat and mimicked. I saw and gained. I had always had my own personality. But I never truly had my own freedoms. I wanted my freedoms at this stage of my life. I wanted to be grateful for what all I had worked for. My health was my priority. Especially my mental health. You know. If you're just going to college and you have no support system, it's going to be difficult. You need a support system. And mothers don't understand this in the Black community when you're having children. They don't factor in the fact that this son or daughter of theirs is going to have to live alone one day. He or she is going to have a family. They're going to have to top what his or her mother had did. This was true. I see so often when I was look back at the years that have passed and all the life that was taken for granted in places like Chicago and Detroit and Philadelphia and New York. No one cared to see the next person make something of themselves. When you're 21, you're thinking about how can I make my situation better? Who can I depend on to help me get to where I need to go, and how can I help this dearest of person to me get to where they need to go? I think about the Great Migrations. My grandfather never talked about his parents to us. My mother didn't know her own grandparents' name. Probably never seen their picture. But my grandfather's second wife showed me a picture of them. And I found their records on a genealogical search. You couldn't doubt me that I wasn't going to get this information. I needed to know it. I needed to know who I was. So I set out and did it. I found so much information. I knew then had I found it, it was my time to start traveling. I hooked up with Peace Corps and met a man from Africa. My trip was scheduled for Sierra Leone. I wanted to educate anyone I saw on the effects of a plant-based life. That was my mission statement. To stop the world's use of wrong food. I felt we could live off a plant dietary. I knew we could. I had been vegan since 2012. I still am vegan now. I promote the eating of legumes and vegetables in their most unrefined state. My aspirations were to move to Ghana one day and have a farm, kids, and a wife. A strong family's values. Believe in one another and support each other's causes. I dreamed of having 2 boys and 2 girls. Living on a farm with livestock. No need to go to school for a non-African education. Because again, what is more important for a child to learn? Is it to be nurturing or to have principal approve him or her for their attendance? I knew easily what this was going to be about. My goals were done in America by the age of 26. I did everything I wanted to do. I met American women and saw they lacked spirituality and in themselves for the most part their own guide. Any woman to me who wanted money over an origin was not hustling right. This world has order. And if you don't keep order, you can forget about an income bracket. It wouldn't mean anything. I met a girl when I was 15. I still know her to this day. I regretted it though. She deals with her own desires. I deal with mine. Yet our desires are not the same. We chose different routes. She wanted to raise children in a place ridden with shootings and robberies. I wanted to raise children on the coastlines. We never got the opportunity to come together. She opted for someone she knew to bear a child. I opted to search my love in a place I had never been before. I saw it happen. A guy inspired me. His name is Kala. He talked about Pan-Africanism. We talked over the phone in 2010. He was telling me about black nationalism and why it is important. For me, you just had to say it once. It doesn't take much for it to make sense if it's sensible on overspoken proof. Long story short, he went to Africa and found his love. This is what it was all about. You go somewhere you never been and find a reason to not go back to what you knew in order to be received in another form. This is all you could ask for. And I told myself I was going to go abroad one day when it made sense as far as affordability. I met people from Africa who would take me up on my offer. I thought yes. I could get to Africa for a good price. Maybe $3,000 at a meeting price. I could save that up in 2 months. So many people inspired me on this journey. One person in particular. His name is Dr. Umar Johnson. He had been through the rigors of proclaiming your nationality and being heavily centered on religion. I saw myself in him. I took all this time just to say I am African and am proud to be African. What was I doing all this time? I saw how people discourage him from starting a school for all boys. I saw how people said his dreams wouldn't work. I was behind him 100% when I found out he was taking donations to get the academy started. I was just hopeful that the school would have been built in Michigan. Because Michigan needed it. No other place in America has been through what Michigan has been through. We had the Flint water crisis. And then we had the bankruptcy of Detroit. Black people couldn't catch a break. I felt this in my stomach. It was depreciating. We fight so hard to be anew and we still experience setbacks. But again, we can't complain about this when we have the opportunity to take another breath and get up from our seat to improve on it. Till this day I still support him and movements that are like his. The idea of nationality is crucial. Nothing more critical than knowing where you are, who you are, how you began, and where is your ends. It hurts me. Knowing a child has no food or clothes to get through a famine or a cold winter is something I couldn't take. I experienced this. I know what it is like to wake up in freezing weather and can't move your legs. I knew what it was like to go to bed without knowing where your next meal would come from. Imagine. I knew what it was like to go to sleep in a shelter knowing you wouldn't be ID'd anytime soon if ever, because the organization wasn't trying to help any more people who needed help finding housing. I think a lot about this. Like, what if I had just left America? Or maybe went to the islands? This would have been damaging to me. You do everything right by the book and nothing pans out for you. Trouble finds us when we least expect it. We work to get everything we need for the present and future, and it's never enough. I sat and watched Obama promise my generation hope and change. And to think, he's going to be around when we're old to say hope and change again. I wonder what was he trying to say or get even within the forming of those ideas he gave during his winning campaign speech during the 2008 election. That was the first time I voted and what seemed like the last time I would vote. I was 18. I saw everything as it was. A man of Kenyan descent assuming a responsibility that was not his. But after that election I cried. I just knew things were going to get better. And it did, it seemed like. Everybody was back to talking to one another. Then things got tired. Then things went back to how they abnormally were. Then things began to get better. Then it got worse. I never thought I would say this, but things were better under Bush. That's as far back as I could remember. I remember people walking outside during the 90s. I remember building infrastructures being better upkept. It's like the more I traveled throughout the USA, the more I saw immigrants from foreign countries making America their home. It was as if we had never just met but had always knew each other. I was pushed by this idea. I wanted to see America for Americans. I wanted to see black people on top again. This was the Cotton South. The millennia we never forget but almost could remember. It's weird when you think about. To make it in America is to have a 6-figure salary in working a tech job in California to some's hopes. But in reality it's the far opposite. To make it is to have land and resources. And this could have came from an inheritance or simply retrieving your tax bill that was owed. Or winning a lawsuit for wrongdoings. How do we redirect the minds of a people who have been lost for so long? Like really we think leaving our homelands wherever we may be is going to solve what we're really missing, and that's care, love, and affection. I see how the division in America became to be. The issue of complexion really being an issue. Men not wanting to associate with other men who have the same line of mothers and fathers because one is darker than the other. I imagined this world being a better place after so every long. I go to bed and wake up thinking this life will reap rewards for everyone. And it does. The idea you're here every day on this planet because God gave you a motivating chance, that you didn't take, is to me very obvious. I don't take life for granted. I want to know how life started and what's in store for us as people. We may never get to see the last part in this movie we're starting in. We may never. But what we will see is the factors that came to be and how they were decided. My days end well. I see the summer coming and the winter coming. I see the spring coming and I see the fall coming. I sit and I watch. I see how the squirrels never violate nature's law. They never attack birds and birds never prey on butterflies. Me, I take it upon myself to feed the inhabitants around me. I saw a squirrel, I hand it a peanut. I see a bee, I allow it to pollinate. I see an ant, I step aside the anthill. It's a duty and obligation to caretake for the earth. We must do our part. It's more than just being a student or teacher. We have to be an observer. Nature hasn't regressed us too much to where they have decided to attack us. If bees wanted us off the earth, we would be off the earth. If lions wanted us off the earth, we would be off the earth. We have to make it right. Life is chance to do so. I look at the moon take its take to travel over my home. I stare at it. It makes me glad. I never could have thought in 1,000 years I would be sitting here with you all today writing an autobiography, or making a musical album, even filming a director's cut. You have to be wired a certain way to want to achieve these types of things. And you can't quit. You have to want to know you are affecting lives and want better for whatever change. When I filmed Going Up North, I did it by myself. It wasn't a Spike Lee joint. But it was from the heart. It was my limited view. Doing anything with right amount of attitude and distinction will land you in places you would not have thought you would be. I'm motivated every day I wake up to accomplish something new. I want to leave a record of work behind for the Akashic Records. I played baseball. Did that. I played basketball. Did that. I helped computer science. Did that. I built a home. Did that. I never got addicted to drugs, alcohol or sex. Did that. This is my hope for many. You can do it because I did it. I only had one adage to mind. Do it because you love to do it. And don't do it because your heart, or love is not in it. We must balance our behaviors. We must rejoice when we fail at something. We must follow the script. We love to be around one another again and find the pleasures in the little things. When I beat my wrist or feather my crown or walk from one end of the earth to other end, I know I found my newfound pleasure. You should want to constantly give back no matter the circumstances. Seeing others' progress should be normal. I'm glad I was able to find my spacing in life from what others had going on. I don't need loud music playing all day around me. I don't need a bar or meeting lounge next to my home. I don't need to feed my mouth with chemicals and dyes every second. This method of living is unhealthy. I remember when I got my first job in freight. I was working on railroads. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I just knew I was going to risk getting there. I walked down a huge hill in Falcon Heights, Minnesota to get to this job. And on the first day I arrived early and didn't know I was not going to have issues getting there. I didn't care if a wild dog or wolf was going to meet me getting to the rail lines. I said I need this career and I am going to get it. I didn't judge people who were judging me or my simple appearance. I figured it. And by figuring it out I started to learn, no one is not too unlike to the point they can't exist together unless they choose to have a bad day that day. It's a simple catch. Do good unto others and good will come unto you. Laugh when you know you need to laugh. Have grace at all times no matter what. Live without borders. This is life. Many people don't follow those instructions God gave us and they end up regretting it in the end. It took for me 2 times messing up in life where I knew I needed to be better than I was than the day of the reckoning. I give my mom and father credit to this degree. They knew to say this to me. When you do your best, good will come back to you. It's like an old tradition where we knew what it comprehended. Give to someone without expecting anything back. Why else wouldn't you? You managed to live for 40 years and just on this particular day you had a moment where you couldn't contain your anger. I never could reach an understanding with that frame of thought. Yet I saw people like this all the time. And I had to find ways to avoid them. I can't let someone mess up a good thing. I have to be cautious and careful about my next word. Life happens fast. You have to enjoy it. Don't let anyone get you down. Again I say this. You will meet all types of people in the world and they will let you know who they are. This removes the karma. Either you know them as they say or you know them as their fruits bear. I enjoyed writing this autobiography. It really captured the moments. I want to take a moment to recognize everyone who has come across me and gave me some positive words of endearment and stood by my side when no one else would. I also want to thank people specifically. A servant named Siren Smith. I have been watching his work for years. He motivated me to be a business-savvy man. I also want to thank another person by the name of Red Hakadohi. He motivated me to be the most creatively as one could be when it came to holding our worth down, you know, keeping it real. It's so many people who have inspired me. Another person is Namutabi. We've shared so many stories about human intervention that it's so unreal. You will find people throughout life who will leave a moment of gratification with you and you will forget to acknowledge. But they will know you respected their deeds. This again is life. Also a memoir about going up north. When I was young I wanted to be an actor with a name like Denzel. All the kids wanted to be actors. We wanted to find ourselves in the best possible situation ever acting out what we had seen on television as kids or our favorite TV shows were the Power Rangers. My favorite Power Ranger was Zachary. He would break dance after every defeat. Look at me as a kid, who else was I supposed to look up to? I looked up to the kids who were in the neighborhood. It was always the toughest ones who I saw that took me under their wings. I never really looked up to my brother because we really didn't hold a bond. We weren't around each other a lot. He was 6 or 7 years older than me, I was 6 or 7 years younger than he was. While he was busy chasing women, I was busy trying to be good at sports. All the kids in the neighborhood wanted to aspire to be even musicians, sports players, or again actors. This could be in entertainment. This was the late 90s. Fashion was a staple. All the kids wore hip-hop clothes. The popular clothes during that time was called Karl Kani. Football didn't come until after. I took a big chunk of my time learning how to play the flute at a certain time. I was really good at it. My instructor would say hit this note and have enough patience to hit that note. The students in the class would learn to take it from me. They would be surprised that I was actually good at performing with the flute. I had childhood sweethearts I enjoyed every time the bell rang. The students I went to school with, I wanted to meet them. Make friends with everyone. I wanted to get to know everyone, but as I got older I got carried away. I remember one time where I came home and my mom, she said, "Denzel, you have after-school program today." I would think maybe I do. She would call the school and if I had lunch programs I would have to go back there myself. But my brother, he was never home. He was in his early years in prison. His associates didn't give him a break. I remember him the first time my brother got in trouble. This time it was because of drug trafficking. He couldn't have been no more than 15. I wish my mom would talk about it with us. What happened this time? A lot of her relatives would give her advice. She would say he got in trouble this time. All I would do is just sit in the corner and watch everybody and be quiet. I wouldn't say anything. I just always knew in the back of my mind what time meant to us. He was never there. I wondered how cool it would be if he was at home. Eventually I would get a mentor though. My mentor would take me to the library and we would sit there and read books, we would make beads and we would make necklaces. I remember I made a red and blue bracelet. I still have it to this day. That bracelet is with me. It brings back memories. Our mentor would take the whole group of young people to the parade and he would take us to the circus. He wouldn't obsess with time. Time just was. Getting out of the house these days for kids is rare. In the 90s we were outside all the time, we weren't inside from sun up to sundown. We had so many activities. There were no problems related to cardiovascular disease. We were outside running all the time. We made the most of our time with each other. The thing was we enjoyed each other's company. As I got older, things became much different. I didn't hang out with the same people I did as a child. I took my own advice sometimes instead of getting advice from my mom. My dad hardly ever called. In fact, the last time I spoke to my dad when I was a child was in September of 2001, around the time the World Trade Center towers fell. I talked to him recently. We talked. I can say we talked about his health. I could tell his health was declining. You get older. You forget about people. We start to live differently. People around us would always say live your life to the fullest. Never go a day without laughing. Never go a day without sadness. Never take shortcuts in life. I understood what that meant too thoroughly. I was actually not one of those kids who would stand outside all day from morning till night, corner to corner. I didn't do it. Mom wouldn't allow it. The neighborhood wouldn't allow it. I didn't do it. I never got into trouble. I always wanted to be successful, and when I got my color guard certificate from my old school I actually picked it up, was proud of myself. When I got my jury papers, I was proud of myself. When I got my Medal of Honor from the Army I was proud of everything I had done. When I got my graduate diploma for nursing again I was so surprised. These were all things that I had to make sure I did so that my mother would feel successful about me. My half-sister I was now a big brother to. This stuff was now attached to me. My sister, I knew she was looking up to me as kids. She celebrated my success. But we grew apart as I got older. We would cut ties and go our separate ways. Now she's an adult with children and now I'm an adult on an inclusive path. So now I'm 16 trying to stay on straightened path. I'm a sophomore in high school trying my best to stay on track and avoid the bad apples around the area. I'm beginning to avoid those close to me. I get along with those I accept as friends. I do poorly in liberal arts. I'm bad at math. I'm bad at reading. Fitness is my only way out. I'm bad at science. I'm only focused at the gym. This is the only time I get in the day to work off that energy. Living in a place like Chicago that has very limited access to open fields, and just as they do with blocks, I take this time to improve my basketball skills. Here I am at 5 feet 7 inches or 5 feet 6 inches, a little chubby. What do I do? Playing basketball allows me to take time off and not only start improving on my skills but on my health. In class I was a wonder. I remember as clear as day November 11, 2006 is the day we left Chicago. I remember watching the Bulls rookie Terrence Thomas play against the San Antonio Spurs. I remember him hopping all over the court. Well, I finally got a chance to meet him later. He offered me some good life advice. My great-uncle came all the way from Lansing, Michigan, and packed our U-Haul with some things that my younger sister and I grabbed. My mother helped too. We left our cousins there. We left the rest of our relatives there. We left our friends there. I didn't go back to Chicago. It was a failed environment for me. I was either going to end up dead or in jail, and I had to change that narrative. I had to figure things out on my own. My grandfather bought my mom a house. We moved to southeast Michigan. We passed Battle Creek, we passed through Ann Arbor. Chicago didn't have one much left in it. I got here and noticed everything was different. I slept in a room that was cold in the winter, I only had 2 pairs of clothes, it was time to make some money, so I went to school. When I got here, I finished school. I took the skills I learned in Chicago in carpentry and took the skills I learned in school with me. I looked for a job quickly, I got a job working at Comerica Park. That's the opportunity I spent with. The money I got went to rent living with my mom and clothes. I bought nothing but dress pants. I was 140 pounds with a 28 waist. It was the best part of my life. My health was good. I didn't really get to meet a lot of people growing up there. Michigan wasn't a place you came to meet people. It was a place you came to work and stay out the way. It was a hideaway. You stayed to yourself. Every day during the spring and summer I played basketball and we would go play at the school. Me and Aardvark. And at night our moms and dads wouldn't come to pick us up. We'd stay up there and run around on the full court. My body got really toned and chiseled. I started to become a better basketball player and a better athlete. It was around the time Derrick Rose got out of college. It was around the time Sharon Collins won the championship for the Kansas Jayhawks. I would just eat a can of beans every day. I wouldn't eat anything else. I was pretty healthy and then I had a growth spurt of a couple inches. I had speed, agility, and length. The kids would say look at Iguodala. I was touching the hoop and everything. I got good as compared to the previous couple years. I had no choice. Money was my motivation. I needed to find something to do with my life other than just play basketball. I wasn't getting paid for it. So I decided to go to school. I ended up going to a Catholic school. I got in there. I tried to start earning credits. But it was something hanging over my head. I didn't like it. I took out a loan to go to school. I noticed how the crowds at this institution were. The people were different. It was a mix of older and younger people going to school together. I didn't like the environment. I wanted to join a free community, so I ended up dropping out. I joined an organization based in Chicago that was focused on helping the around communities and ask people if they needed resources. I would talk to the people and ask them what I could do to make their lives better. Here I'm 21 trying to figure things out on my own. It didn't last long because you couldn't just go up to someone in southeast Michigan and ask them if they needed help. My mom stopped me one day and said, "Denzel, you have to leave." I said okay and I left. I hung around homeless shelters. I was delivering way bills for the moment. Then I said enough is enough. I ended up leaving Michigan. I ended up in Minnesota. I saw how detailed the economy was. I was getting job after job. Jobs that I could never get had I stayed in Detroit. These were good paying jobs. I got minimum pay, and took a good slate of hours that were available. It was just another experience under my belt for me and was preparing me for the real world. But it wasn't like the experience I had when I was in the military. In the military I would have to wake up for boot camp every day and do PT. We would run and walk miles at a time. We would do hand-to-hand combat on empty stomachs. We only got a minimum hours of sleep. 2 hours at best. I ended up developing sleep apnea. We had for the next 3 months would be battle buddies to each other. I was stationed to go to Virginia Beach. My first sergeant and captain sat down with me and we decided it was best I didn't go. I thought about toughing it out. The only thing was, were my superiors going to accept a Chicago kid on their premises? The Army experience was easy. It was dealing with the people that was hard. Some of us couldn't relate to each other. I was from a black town. Others were from purple towns. Even them. Many of the staffers were from blue and red towns. I met fellow there from Georgia. He looked like me. Except he was very open and hospitable. I was stoic. He say, "Hey, you going home soon?" And why? He thought I was performing well. But that wasn't for me to say. I did do well. It's just I went in at 19 and I wasn't prepared to deal with the circumstances that came with that. I had comrades on base who were cool as all outdoors, but some of my first sergeants gave me hell. I just wanted to rest and follow basketball more. After all, it's 2009. I'm seeing my favorite high school athletes get drafted from places like Mississippi and Pennsylvania, and New York. It was exciting times. I didn't use this time wisely. My corporal wouldn't inspect me. My captain would too. She would come to my platoon and look me dead in the eyes and say nothing, as if to say, "Is this soldier ready?" She knew I was ready. I had to be the most battle-tested of all in my barracks. My driller was from Puerto Rican. He didn't care for me. One particular day we were on the range getting targets. A soda can went up. I targeted it. He said, "Watch him because he's from Chicago." To me it was embarrassing. I hit my target. No problem. But my soldiers were buying into his disrespect for me. I thought, is this how it is in the military? Why am I here? I took all that animosity I had occurred from people I didn't even know and used it as fuel for when I was in Minnesota. I said nothing to anyone unless I saw something in that particular person. But now I am back in Southeast Michigan after these times. I'm noticing life is drastically changing. I'm becoming what I always thought I was. A mature person. I didn't worry much after my grandfather died. Everybody was distant memories. I was seeing life differently. I am becoming more and more a people's person. I filmed in this cast called The Last Creek. It's about my last days in America. I finally found my purpose in life. I was going to be what I said I was going to become when I was a kid. Someone who lived out all his dreams. I was steady in finding my worth. Between Africa and America it was a small world. I was seeing everything converge on me. And I was prepared for it. My grandmother has passed on my birthday. I was thinking, like, life is bittersweet. You have to expecting of the moments. Your story is never told. This is what inspired me to write my life on paper. I was rhyming again for fun. It wasn't hard for me not to see the worth in people. Because I saw people as more capable and more talented than I myself. I said, how did I inherit nothing though inherited everything all at once? I couldn't help but think, man, God works in mysterious ways. I found my passion. I'm scheduled to head out to Africa next year. I'm planning to see a lot of things. Main thing is invest in the economies there. See the spot prices for raw mineral and raw gold. You have to bring something back. Heck, I might as well stay. I'm still young. I may find the love of my life there. Us sharing stories with one another. We wanting to go back and live primitively. Do the most in what I can't do for along the shores of America. This was going up north.